Look in the mirror, tell me what you see. Is that the leader that you promised you would be? There's a space between.
So I've had this vision for quite some time to impact the next generation of leaders. And so Influential Skills is designed to help team leaders primarily own their own personal growth habits so they can develop the communication skills and the relationship building skills they need to, ultimately build a culture of champions. I feel it's happening for a lot of reasons, but if I had to boil it down to just, one or two, one is that individuals don't have responsibility for their own personal growth and their own leadership journey. They rely on the organization to provide those opportunities. And on the flip side, the organizations find it very difficult to provide enough of the skill building, leadership development for all the different things that need to be learned, right? So you may have conflict resolution, effective communication, leading effective meetings. Like there's all these different types of skills that are needed, and it's really challenging for organizations to provide that at scale. And so what you end up with is a lot of things that need to be learned, but there's no ownership from the individual to actually lean in and learn it. And so there's no application that comes out of it. People may attend a class, but then nothing actually comes and there's no real change. And so organizations either don't invest in it at all, or what they do invest in, they don't get the kind of ROI they could if the individual participants in those programs had more ownership on the journey. For me, that student of the game part is the first step of what I call becoming a growth catalyst, right? And so if you think about that concept, it's the idea that, hey, I need to grow as a leader individually so that I can help my team grow and develop. The best quality of a leader is developing other leaders. And so the first step of being a growth catalyst is the student of the game. And so this is a consistent, intentional effort to learn on a daily basis. And I'm not just talking about scrolling, on LinkedIn or scrolling on YouTube and binging, but having an intentional plan of action for how am I going to learn every single day? And a lot of times that comes down to the basic habits that we have. It could be the books that we're reading daily, the audios that we're listening to, the mentors that we have that we consistently and intentionally reach out to. But what is our specific plan to ultimately be a student of the game? And what's the game? It's leadership. Right? How do I develop intentionally, as a leader on a daily basis? So there's a lot of layers to that. I found one of the first things is removing the roadblock, meaning a lot of individuals feel like they either don't have the time, like you mentioned, to learn. Sometimes ego gets in the way. And so for me, one of the first things that I'll do, with an organization and with a cohort of team leaders is help identify their own leadership motivation. Meaning, why do you as an individual benefit from developing into a leader? A lot of times we just kind of jam information into people's environment, into a class, into a workshop, and they don't really want to be there, that they don't feel it's relevant. And so in order to help develop as a leader, I need to have motivation to want to be a leader. And so that's one of the things that I do to unlock people's potential is really work through, maybe they want more money, maybe they want to grow their career, maybe they want to stop being frustrated, as a leader because they're constantly running into pain points. And so each person's going to be a little different. And so for me, that's kind of the first step in engaging, is helping them, yes, put together a plan, but before we have a plan, we need the individual's reason for why they would want to grow and own their own personal development journey as well. I wish I had more time, in our segment to share on all the pieces. If you look at my growth catalyst, part of the framework, there's 4 parts to it. And the second part after becoming a student is becoming what I call the performer, right? A lot of people, they listen, they read, they grow in some capacity, but they don't have a clear execution plan to apply what they've learned. They read that book and they didn't get anything from it. They went to that workshop, I always say, on conflict, but they still deal with conflict problems. They don't actually address it. And so there's an element of terms of a mindset from learning to doing, right? Becoming that performer, but also what I call the courage muscle. Like you got to have the courage to do the thing. And a lot of times it's because, we're uncomfortable. And so we've got to consciously and intentionally learn and then have a clear plan for applying it. And so I find there's usually a couple categories of learners. There's the ones who binge learn and they learn a ton. There's the ones that are sporadic. I read a book every maybe one a year, maybe a couple a year, but I don't do it consistently. Then there's the one who just like I learn on the job, and there's an element that's true. But you really need to open the funnel in terms of the content you're bringing in, and then become a performer. To have the courage and do something daily based on what you're learning. So just think about this segment right now, right? People that are listening to this, they're leaning in, they want to learn, they want to elevate, they want to grow. So let's use an exact example from where we're at right now. What I would challenge anyone who's listening to this is think about one leadership challenge you have. Whether it may be conflict, keep coming back to that, right? It may be you want to cast a vision, you want to build a tighter team, a tighter culture. You need to learn better, active listening skills, empathy. What is the leadership skill challenge roadblock that you have? Identify it. Okay, now think of someone in your network that's really good at that thing. Just think of one person. You may know them really well, you may not know them at all. And now here's the challenge. Like in the next 10 minutes, I want you to call them. I want you to text them. I want you to email them. I want you to carrier pigeon them. I don't know. You got to get in touch with them like in the next 10 minutes. It's maybe uncomfortable, and let them know, hey, I've seen a lot of value from you in this area. If you're open to it, I'd love to get your perspective and catch up, right? This goes from what you just learned in our session today. Now you take action on that. It starts to build a habit. You do things like that consistently, and what you're going to start doing is learn something and then do something as soon as you learn it, and ideally within 24 to 48 hours if you want it to stick. And when you build that habit muscle over time, you'll do what I call, which is leadership transformation. You do not develop these skills overnight. It takes time, but the habits you develop, the mindset you develop is what allows you to actually transform into the kind of leader who can build a championship culture. Absolutely. I was very fortunate, in my college years to study under, in my opinion, one of the top coaches in the soccer industry. In fact, not just my opinion, he was ranked as one of the top three, winningest coaches of all time. And in that environment, it was a high performance culture. He 6 national championships in 12 years, went on to win 5 more. So a dynasty environment. So high performance, but also low ego. It was a culture where top talent could have easily gone and played other places, got better scholarship opportunities, whatever the case may be. But people wanted to be there because of who you became in that culture, in that environment. And so a lot of the foundation of how I think today is really formed in that environment. And I came out of that and I didn't see a lot of leadership like that. And the biggest thing I always recommend is if you're going to become a great leader, you need to get around great leaders. And so if you don't have that in your culture, in your environment, it's very difficult to create it. And so that's why I always encourage people, like when you create great leadership, it compounds over time in the organization because leaders teach other leaders naturally. Leadership is better caught than it is taught. So I think the biggest thing I keep coming back to is owning an identity of being a growth catalyst as a leader. And what that means is I'm going to consistently focus on my own personal growth and development so that I can develop it in others. And so if we own it, then we can develop it. If we don't own it, then we lose all control over the life and the environment that we can create. So that'll be my biggest message, is really to help leaders recognize and own their own personal growth journey, and not pass it off to anybody else. It's our responsibility as leaders to develop ourselves. I would say the 2 easiest places, one is LinkedIn. I post regularly on there. If you have my full name, I'm really easy to find, as well as my company name, Influential Skills. And then, of course, my website, www.influentialskills.com, to understand more about how people can engage with me, and look forward to connecting there as well.